This mom married two of her children. In Oklahoma of 2001, 44-year-old Patricia Spann had lost her husband, James Spann. They had 3 children together, 2 boys and 1 girl. Patricia had lost custody of her children soon after James's death. The children's paternal grandmother had ended up adopting them. The children grew up in the care of their grandmother until some of them became young adults. During that time, they had no contact with their birth mother, Patricia. In 2007, Patricia had introduced herself as a potential date for her 18-year-old son, Jodie. Jodie was unaware that Patricia was his birth mother, and they ended up getting married in 2008. In 2010, Jodie ended up finding out that Patricia was his biological mother and ended the marriage. In 2014, Patricia was able to reunite with her daughter Misty and claim that they just hit it off. And on March 26 of 2016, the both of them ended up getting married. Authorities had found out about the relationship during a child welfare investigation just 5 months later. Detectives had learned that not only had she married her daughter, but she had married her son as well. Patricia had managed to marry both of her children since her name was not on their birth certificates. Misty was given a 10-year suspended jail sentence after admitting to incest. In January of 2018, Patricia went to trial, pled guilty, and was sentenced to 2 years in prison and got an additional 8 years of probation.
Boeing released this statement. "We are saddened by Mr. Barnett's death and our thoughts are with his friends and family. When people found out about John's death, everyone had so many questions and were speculating the obvious. What are the odds that this man who was speaking against one of the biggest and richest companies in the world ends up dead?" Before John passed away, he told his lawyers that he felt like people in the company were spying on him. Then one of John's close friends was interviewed, and she said that one day she was speaking to John about the lawsuit, and she asked him if he was scared that something could happen to him.
He did not commit suicide. There's no way. He wasn't concerned about safety because I asked him, I said, "Aren't you scared?" The way he would talk, "No, I ain't scared." He said, "But if anything happens to me, it's not suicide." I know that he did not commit suicide. There's no way.
Dirty facts about history that school probably didn't teach you, part 14. Philosopher Jean-Jacques Rousseau would hide in alleyways, pull his pants down, and jump scare women ass first in hopes they would get scared and spank him in self-defense. Apparently, this was his kink. A famous Irish pirate named Anne Bonny would fight with one boob out just to show that not only are you about to get murdered, but you're about to get murdered by an 18-year-old girl. Oh, this? This is my murder titty. York, the only slave on the Lewis and Clark expedition, was a sensation among indigenous American women. They found the guy quite attractive, and he would tell them that he was part bear so they would sleep with him in hopes of producing a bear warrior baby. LBJ used to take out his pee-pee and show people how big it was. He referred to it as jumbo, and here's a phone call of him complaining to a clothing company that their pants were too tight on his Ladybird Lance.
The crotch down where your nuts hang is always a little too tight. If you can't leave me about an inch from where the zipper ends, round under my back to my bunghole.
These are the most disturbing torture devices I saw at the Torture Museum in Amsterdam. This device is called the garrote. And again, when I first saw it, it really didn't seem that bad. But then I found out why it's actually been called the harshest execution method of all time. The garrote was used during medieval times, and even later all around the world for punishment, execution, and even as a tool for assassinations. The most recent case I found happened less than 50 years ago in Spain. So how does this device work? The victim is held in place by a collar that's made of iron here but can also be made with wires. It's then tightened all the way, the spike piercing through the victim, supposedly crushing their brainstem. But it didn't always work, because the spike would often miss the brainstem, so it would just be buried in the victim's head until they passed, which allegedly could take over 15 minutes. But we're not done, because there's just a few more torture devices I saw in this museum, so follow to hear all their backstories.
Our timeline is completely messed up and it's going to blow your mind. Up first, for example, Eminem and Picasso were alive at the same time for 2 years. I don't know about you, but am I the only one that thought Picasso was around in the 1800s? Another one to wrap your head around is that the woolly mammoths were around at the same time the pyramids were being built. But just wait, this is just the beginning. Next, Rosa Parks lived long enough to see the first 2 Shrek movies in theaters. Like, what? Next, when the Declaration of Independence was being signed, nobody knew dinosaurs even existed. Think about that, like dinosaurs weren't even discovered yet. This next one is going to absolutely blow your mind. Cleopatra was born closer to the invention of the iPhone than to the actual pyramids being built. Finally, this next one makes 0 sense, but it's absolutely true. Oxford University was founded 300 years before the Aztec Empire. Like, how?
This man is about to become the first person ever to run the full length of Africa. And after running every single day for the last 340, he only has 9 left to go. Russ Cook from the UK started the 9,000-mile trip from the tip of South Africa and will finish at the edge of Tunisia. And honestly, Russ gives David Goggins a bloody run for his money for hardest man alive. Because not only has he decided to run roughly 2 marathons a day through some of the hottest countries on the planet, while being ginger. But on his travels, he's been kidnapped and driven roughly 7 miles into the jungle and was very lucky to make it out alive. He and his video team were robbed at gunpoint. He's had to wade through rivers, hike over mountains, run at night through the Sahara. He's got caught in sandstorms. And even when he was peeing blood, he continued running. When he had food poisoning, he continued running. When he had the shits and needed to vomit, he stopped and did his thing and then continued running. The only thing that almost stopped this man was when he couldn't get a visa to pass through Algeria. But he turned to his followers for help, and people gathered together and managed to get the attention of the Algerian embassy in the UK, who then personally reached out to him on X and granted him a courtesy visa on the spot. So far, he's raised a massive £322,000 for charity and has a massive party planned for when he reaches the finish line. And if it's taking you 340 days to find out that there is a man running the entire length of Africa, you now have 9 days left to watch history being made. The person punching random women in New York has been caught, but honestly, this gets weird. Skibuki Stora was charged with assault on Wednesday for punching Haley. And while it's still not clear whether he was the same person that punched the numerous others, the NYPD said that he has been arrested 3 times in the past 6 months for similar incidences and has an extensive criminal record. Which begs the question why he continues being let back on the streets. And what's crazier is that he's been snitching on himself. Because if you go onto just some of his around 10 TikTok accounts, you'll find that not only is he a failed politician unsuccessfully running for mayor of New York, governor, and city council, but he has countless videos of him walking around and harassing women on the street. Sometimes he'll say things like, "Slow down, what are you in a rush for?" Other times he'll comment on what they're wearing or how their hair is styled, and sometimes he'll just record them without saying anything. Fortunately though, this time it's being reported that he has been booked into a jail and is scheduled to appear before a judge on April the 3rd.
Further that you look into dark history, you start to realize just how dark it really is. This woman behind me, this is Lorleen Wallace. She was the first female governor of Alabama, and she was diagnosed with stage 4 cervical cancer. Dark history for Lorleen was that, legally, doctors did not have to tell her. They only told her husband. Really let that sink in. She was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, terminal cancer, and only her husband was told. Her husband decided not to tell her. Legally, he didn't have to. It was thought at the time that women's nerves were too fragile to be able to handle news like this, so only their husbands were told. I think we're probably going to cover this on the podcast because this is actually a pretty in-depth story if you want to listen. Basically, the way this story ends is that Lorleen, she does become governor. She runs, but she only lives through the first year of her term. She was never initially told she was dying.
Chainsaw-wielding man in Scream costume accused of killing next-door neighbor. This is 30-year-old Zach Moyer. He's now being accused of attacking his neighbor with a chainsaw and then stabbing him to death. This happened in Pennsylvania on March 25th at 3 p.m. Officers responded to a call. That's when they found the victim with life-threatening injuries. They tried to rush him to the hospital, but he was pronounced dead upon arrival. Police got intel that the suspect fled on foot. They put all schools in the area on lockdown. That's when they found Zach Moyer barricaded up in his own home on the same street. The victim's name is Edward Whitehead Jr. Apparently Moyer went to Whitehead's home wearing a Scream costume to, I guess, scare him. Obviously, that prank went wrong and Moyer took it way too far. The chainsaw hit the victim in his head. He was then stabbed all over, including his chest, arms, and back. While the police were trying to get Moyer out of his house, he was writing notes to them claiming that his neighbor was a criminal. But texts got leaked between him and his sister saying that he wanted to kill Ed, the neighbor. It's not looking too good for him right now. Let me know what you guys think about this story in the comment section below, and as always, these videos are for informational purposes only.
This is new release footage after 12-year-old Russell escaped from Jodie Hill house back in August 2023. He was kept tied up in Jodie's house along with his sister, and after he escaped, he ran to this neighbor's home to get some help. He had cuts and sores on his wrists and ankles. I can't help but notice how skinny and frail he looks.
He has duct tape around each injury.
There's swords around them.
So after this man got off the phone with police then went to Jodie's house to look for another one of Ruby's children, and they arrested Jodie, and this is how it went.
Police officers, open up! Got movement right here? Right there. Contact? Got movement. Open the door! Jodie, I need you to step out.
I have my turn.
That's great. Step out of the house.
No, I'm not going to step out of the
Step
house.
out of the house. Step out of the house.
Whoa.
We're just going to
Come on,
Is there anybody else home?
Wait a minute, how do you come to my house?
Right there.
Look, they come into my house.
Just have a seat right there.
Do you have a search warrant?
Have a seat right there.
Do you have a search warrant?
Have a seat right there. I'll explain everything after. Have a seat right there.
Do you have a search warrant, sir?
Control 12x11. Can you hold the air? We're searching the house.
I can tell you what's in the house.
Okay. Just have a seat right there for me.
Do you have a search warrant?
We'll explain it after this.
You can't just come into my house without a search warrant.
We'll explain everything after this, ma'am.
The fact that Jodie was already on the phone with her lawyer when police arrived is crazy to me. It just shows that she had a feeling that she was already in trouble, so she called her attorney.
A town in Thailand is now being overrun by a massive monkey gang, and police are now fighting back. We got a frickin' monkey war before. Now, Lopburi has been dealing with huge amounts of monkeys since the pandemic, stealing food from people and shops, vandalizing property, and even damaging vehicles. But it's got so bad recently that the police general has now ordered a special unit specifically to combat the monkeys. And yes, somehow, this is a real police vest that this unit is wearing. And this war is getting tactical because the monkeys have started learning which officers are armed and which are not. So police have had to adapt by hiding their faces and tranquilizers. Police have even apparently had to go on a mission to capture the monkey gang's leader, named Aikrao, who has a reputation for being infamously aggressive. As of right now, the war rages on, so I'll keep you updated.
This prison employee helped 2 inmates escape. New York Prison Break tells a story about how Joyce Mitchell helps 2 killers escape prison. David Sweat and Richard Matt were able to seduce Joyce in helping them escape. Joyce had no idea that they were using her to their advantage. Obviously, this ended up being really bad since now there's 2 killers on the loose. I'm partnering with Lifetime's Ripped from the Headlines to get you excited about their true crime films. To find out what happens next, make sure to check out Lifetime's Ripped from the Headlines New York Prison Break at mylifetime.com/watchripped.
This video is so disturbing that a number of people have fell ill after watching it. Proceed with caution.
One here smells great. Which one? Smells like Mother's crazy sister Kate. Oh, you think so? Yeah, I do. It smells so good. She couldn't have been that crazy. I don't think so. Oh, you don't think so, huh? No. Well, she put her poodle one time in a microwave oven to eat it. Yeah, to eat it. Oh, no. No, 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 silly. To dry it. But it exploded. And they were both found dead. She must have been out of her head.
You haven't figured it out? It's an ice wall yet?
Don't you take that patronizing tone with me, boy. You're wearing a hat that says ice wall. I wish I had the balls to walk around with a sign on my head that says I never learned how to read.
When the Navy went to Antarctica and flying a helicopter and panning, they never get to the end because It's just an ice wall.
Whoa, okay, pause. Antarctica's really big. About the size of one Antarctica. But you seem to have gotten the size of Antarctica confused with the size of Rhode Island. Secondly, let's critical think for a second, if you can do that. By some lapse of judgment on my end, I decided to give you a helicopter, and I told you to fly it around Antarctica. Personally, you wouldn't make it. It's too big, you'd run out of fuel, you'd crash into the ocean. For any confusion, see Rhode Island. Before you crashed into the ocean, if you were flying around Antarctica in a big counterclockwise circle, do you know what you would see out of the left window of your helicopter the entire time? A giant wall of ice. You wanna know why? Because that's what it looks like when you're looking at the side of a giant fucking circle. I've been sailing along this coast for 10 months. I think it's an infinite wall of jungle. The sheep keep telling me that I'm just sailing around Hawaii.
Mariam lives in the UK with her family, and after having a small baby, strange things started happening at her home. And she decided to record some of these strange things, and I'm gonna show you guys some of her very creepy videos. This is one of her first videos, check this out.
Anyone is here, can you give me any sign, anything, moving the chair on the table or something? Oh my god, okay, wait, okay, wait, look at that, look at that, look. Can you stop now? It's enough. I know you are here. It's enough. What do you want? Okay, leave it. You need to leave now. This is not your house. You need to leave. This is not your house. No.
They were very creeped out about it, and after uploading several videos on the issue, things got even creepier. The thing is, paranormal investigators say you should not communicate back with these spirits because things can get creepier, and they did. And this is one of her next videos. Check this out. Well, you can imagine that they were very creeped out, but it gets even creepier. Check this out.
Nothing here. Oh my god. Give me that phone. Oh my. Nothing here. Nothing. It's nothing. Oh my god. What is this? Oh my god. No, look. What the hell is a locking door? No, it's okay.
This pedophile committed a crime so disturbing that a petition was created that asked the government to publicly hang him. And the petition gathered thousands of signatures. This is 33-year-old Benjamin Taylor from West Virginia. And in 2016, he would commit one of the most sickening crimes I've ever read about. Back in 2016, Benjamin was living with his girlfriend, a woman named Amanda Adkins. At the time, Amanda had recently given birth only 9 months ago to her baby daughter, Emily. Emily was a beautiful young girl. And I want to warn you all right now, the details that we're about to discuss are some of the most disturbing I've ever covered. So in October of 2016, Benjamin had only been living with his girlfriend Amanda for about a month. And on the morning of Emily's death at around 4:30 a.m., Amanda woke up and went downstairs to search for her baby. When she went downstairs, she saw Benjamin Taylor with his pants unzipped sitting in the dark. Amanda then noticed that her 9-month-old daughter's limp body was lying nearby on a pile of sheets and laundry. Amanda screamed at Benjamin and grabbed her daughter's lifeless body, but he remained silent and stared at the ground. The details of what had just happened down there are disturbing. Local authorities would call this the worst assault that they had seen in decades. You see, Benjamin and Emily were covered in the infant's blood. After the child's body was examined, the authorities were able to determine that she had been assaulted by an adult male multiple times. The infant child was also bleeding extensively and had suffered head trauma. Emily had a fractured skull and brain hemorrhaging. Authorities believe that Emily may have been shaken violently, or even thrown to the ground or slammed against a hard object. When police arrived at the scene, Benjamin Taylor was observed trying to wipe something off of his groin. That was eventually determined to be Emily's blood. He also told authorities that he remembered taking the baby to the basement, but that he blacked out after that. You see, he had been smoking and drinking the night before, and that was his excuse. Thankfully, Benjamin was convicted of all charges and sentenced to life in prison without mercy, as you can see right here. But for some people, that just wasn't enough. And like I said at the beginning of this video, a petition was created which asked the government to publicly hang Benjamin. And this petition, before it was shut down, gathered over 50,000 signatures. I mean, this truly is one of the worst things that I've ever covered here on my TikTok. And personally, I don't think that life in prison is enough for this guy. I mean, the pain that poor Emily went through before she was eventually killed is just heartbreaking on every single level. And I just hope and pray that the other prisoners that are in there with Benjamin find out or already have found out exactly what he did to land himself in there. If you want to hear more true crime stories, listen to the podcast Murder in America that I co-host with my wife, Courtney. It's available on all streaming platforms.